Yeah, my name's Adam Minnick. We're at Arnold's, greatest place ever. I'm a grad student at Xavier University, getting my master's in education at the same time getting my licensure and certification to be a middle school teacher eventually. I also am a comedian inside. Also, I'm working on 2 books. Wrote a children's book, and I'm working on a book based on history of my grandparents who were in the concentration camps during World War II. My American dream, I didn't really have much of an American dream. My childhood was really much different than most people because I spent half of my childhood in Napoleon, Ohio, which is up by Toledo, and the other half was spent in Perth, Australia, and a lot of flying back and forth, a lot of traveling within the States, but then, just my biggest recollection of childhood was pack a bag and get on an airplane and fly to the other side of the world, where I would go see the rest of our family. But through meeting people and through my own, I guess you call it work ethic, I think the American dream is kind of the old saying of, if you work hard enough for anything, you can get it. You can start with nothing in this country, and if you work hard enough for it, you'll get it. My grandfather's story. He was in a Russian death camp. He was thrown into a Russian death camp and escaped. And then for about a month he was in a forest in Poland. And then he was shot by a Nazi and thrown into a prison camp. And then my grandmother, she was taken from her home at the beginning of the war, and then she's in a slave camp for the whole duration of the war. And I think her camp, there was about 6,000 girls that started out, and within the 6 years of the war, there was less than 1,200 girls that survived. And the most surprising thing about the Holocaust, to me, to the concentration camps and everything, that I find very disappointing is very focused on the Jewish people. Like, you open a history book, it's always Jews they're talking about. Like, they're the only ones that survived and went through it. And then they mentioned gypsies and Russians and homosexuals and those who were mentally and physically handicapped, but very little is talked about the Polish Catholics and the Christians that went to the camps. And as I started doing more research, I found out that the second highest concentration of people who went through the camps were Polish Catholics, and they were the highest number of people who helped save Jewish people from like the ghetto, or from, hide them in the house. They hid them in their houses and which is, I find it very disappointing. And even touring Auschwitz this past summer, there's a tour guide. Even a tour guide said that you always knew the ones who were the Jews in Auschwitz was because they had numbers tattooed on their forearms, which is not true, because I've interviewed several survivors who had numbers tattooed on their arms, and they weren't in Auschwitz. They were in camps in Buchenwald, and they're Polish Catholics. And so I find it to me, when I hear stuff like that, it's very, very disappointing. I get a little irritated because, even one Polish survivor said, why have we been forgotten, after so many years? How come we're not in history books? And so one project I've taken, that's the main reason of the book I'm working on the Polish Catholic survivors, is that people do know that they were also the ones that went to the camps. It's kind of, I think, my main mission in life is to do that, to help educate others. My grandparents immigrated to Australia after the war. They lived in these refugee camps I believe it was like Raven Fremantle, which is a suburb of Perth. It's a port city. But then they moved up to maybe an area called the Netherlands, I think. But they lived in refugee housing, and then they raised money for their own home. And then the money that my grandparents made went towards my mother and my uncles, their education and music lessons. To the point that my grandfather rode a bicycle to work every day. They never owned a car. Like, education and music was #1. My grandfather always said, if you can get an education, because that's the only thing they can't take from you. They can take your property, they can take your family, they just can't take your education. I think it's still there. I think people still believe you can come to America and if you work hard enough, you can get that. But there's also another thought that you go to America, you'll be rich. Automatically, you'll be rich, no problem. Part of the issue right now with where we're at is we've grown up with a very greedy generation. I think people think that things should be handed to them, whereas 20 years ago, people thought, I'm gonna, if I work, I'm gonna paraphrase Adam Carolla, where nowadays people see this brand new car, they don't say, I'm gonna work hard to get that car. I'm gonna go and scratch that guy's car because he has something I want and I can't get it. Whereas like 10, 20 years ago, that time people thought, that guy's got a Porsche. Like, what can I do to get a Porsche? How hard, what do I have to do to get that, to have that thing? It's very American not to travel. I mean, in a way, it makes sense because everything you need is here in America. But I think it is the American idea is don't go anywhere, just stay in the country, and instead of buying a plane ticket, you can go see the Mona Lisa. They'd rather buy themselves a brand new flat screen TV that's going to be, that you give it 3 months and it'll drop in price. So like growing up with such a different background, I've come to appreciate traveling, and I think everyone should travel. I think it's probably the best education anyone can do for themselves, because you go places, and a lot of people complain about having a car that's 5 years old. Well, my cousins took me, all my cousins live in Poland. I mean, my cousin, she drove me from Torun, Poland to Warsaw, and in this car that's not even a 16-year-old would own, because they'd be too embarrassed to drive it. But people don't, a lot of Americans don't realize how lucky they have it. They don't understand how good they have it. And it was only like 10, 11 years ago that, I think about 10, 11 years ago, Poland was still somewhat of a communist country. And my cousin would tell me that people, like 50 people would wait in line, get up at 4 a.m., wait in line for TVs to come in. And 10 TVs would come in, and the ones that got them, they were black and white, not even color. In here, so many people complain about having one TV that's color and it's flat screen. They want to have 2 or 3. So I think Americans in a way are very spoiled, extremely spoiled. So I think traveling, it does open your eyes to things that you do have. You appreciate for what you have. I mean, I think Americans, we take it for granted for things we have. When I was an undergrad at Xavier, back in 2000, years ago, I joined an improv group called Don't Tell Anna, and I had a blast doing it. I did it for a year, and then I kind of just I enjoyed doing it. And then during the summer I'd be a guest on each different improv groups around the city, and they were terrible. I mean, they were terrible. But I love Don't Tell Anna. I had a blast doing it. But I thought, I want to do something on my own. I want to succeed on my own, and I want to completely bomb on my own, just fail. And I got in the, I just started doing mics. It took me about a year and a half, 2 years to actually get a good set, and I could actually start getting paid. So I think the biggest thing is don't listen to people. Don't ever listen to people. Because they will be your biggest obstacle. Period. The second biggest obstacle will be you. Because once you start listening to them people, that's proper grammar, when you start listening to people and what they have to say, that'll make you think that no, you can't do it. You can't do it. If I had listened to people say, if I had, I guess you're right, I'm not funny, I'm just gonna quit and just stick to banking. I wouldn't be where I'm at now. I feel like if I had listened to people, and I'm a very stubborn person. So I think what it is, just don't. If you really want something, and it's probably cliche to a certain extent, but if you want something, just do it. Just don't listen to people. That's the worst thing to do, is listen to people's opinion.